Imagine this. You are locked in a tiny stone cell beneath the greatest arena ever built. Above you, 50,000 Romans just finished screaming as they watched your husband die, fighting a lion. The crowd is leaving. The torches are dimming. But for you, the nightmare is just starting. You hear footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming. Closer. A shadow fills your doorway. It's the gladiator who survived today's massacre. He's still covered in blood that isn't his own. A guard unlocks your cell. The gladiator points at you. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This was just a typical Tuesday in the Roman Empire. What I'm about to show you is the part of Roman history they conveniently leave out of the textbooks. It's the systematic, state-sponsored nightmare that happened after the crowds went home. We have the evidence. It's documented by Roman writers themselves. It's literally carved into the walls, beneath the Colosseum. If you stay until the end, I promise you, you will never look at ancient Rome the same way again. Hollywood has been lying to you about gladiators for decades. Think about movies like Gladiator or Spartacus. They show you the blood, the combat, the honor. What they don't show you is what happened when the games ended, when the public spectacle turned into something much darker. Historians have a term for this: Victoria Carnalis, or Carnal Victory. But the Romans didn't call it that. To them, it wasn't special enough to need a name. It was just ... normal. Here is what we know for a fact. Writers like Martial and Juvenal documented a world where conquered women were warehoused beneath arenas and distributed as prizes, literally handed out like rations to gladiators who performed well. The Roman government ran this system with the same efficiency they used to build roads. Think about that. The same civilization that gave us concrete and democracy also perfected the industrialization of sexual violence. Before we go deeper, if you believe hidden history deserves to be exposed, hit that like button. Because this story isn't just about Rome. It's about what empires do when no one is looking. To understand the horror of the underground, or the Hypogeum, you first have to understand how Rome turned human beings into inventory. When Rome conquered a place like Gaul or Judea, they didn't just win a battle. They processed a population. It was a factory assembly line for human suffering. Men sent to die in mines. Children sold to markets. Women designated as captive war prizes belonging to the state. Under Roman law, these people were no longer human. They were classified as race, things, property, the same legal category as a chair or a cow. You couldn't commit a crime against them because, legally, they didn't exist as people. And the games, they were political theater designed to crush your soul. During the lunch break at the Colosseum, when the rich people went to eat, things got truly sadistic. Historians call these fatal charades. They would force prisoners to act out myths. But the deaths were real. The poet Martial writes about this casually, like he's reviewing a restaurant. He describes a prisoner dressed as Orpheus, the musician. They released a bear. The bear mauled him to death, while the crowd ate snacks. In another passage and warning, this is disturbing. He describes a woman forced to reenact a myth where she was publicly assaulted by a bull until she died. This wasn't one crazy emperor. This was standard procedure. Senators brought their kids to watch. Now, let's talk about the men who received these prizes. Gladiators were walking contradictions. They were slaves, lower than dogs, legally, but they were also celebrities. Women of the upper class were obsessed with them. Graffiti in Pompeii calls one gladiator the Sigh of the Girls. Rich women would sneak into barracks. They even bought gladiator sweatias, sweat mixed with oil as a beauty product. But Rome was terrified of these men. Remember Spartacus? He almost burned Rome to the ground. So, how do you control dangerous men who know how to kill? You give them rewards, food, money, and ... access to women. The sources are vague, but the pattern is clear. After a big win, a gladiator would be escorted down into the Hypogeum, still wearing his armor, still bleeding. He'd be led past the animal cages to a specific section of cells. Archaeological evidence shows these rooms were different. Stone benches at weird heights, iron rings, bolted into the walls. Chains permanently mounted to the stone. These cells held the captive condemned war captives. The gladiator would be shown a row of cells. Maybe he picked one. Maybe he was assigned one. The door would be unlocked, and from the state's perspective, this was a perfect system. It cost nothing. It kept the gladiators happy, and it sent a message. If you win for Rome, you get to dominate the conquered, just like the emperor does. Now you might be thinking, is this just a theory? No. The archaeology is damning. When they excavated beneath the Colosseum, they found these specialized chambers. Small rooms, 10 to 15 square meters, separate from the animal cages. The doors locked from the outside. The walls show scratch marks, fingernails trying to dig through solid stone. In the amphitheater in Caputha, same city where Spartacus started his revolt, they found graffiti scratched into the cell walls. One reads roughly, "I was Amelia of the Brig. I saw my children killed. Now I am nothing." Another one says, "To any god who listens, let me die before tomorrow." These aren't the voices history books usually keep. Roman chronicles record the names of emperors and generals. They don't record the names of inventory item number 402. But the stones, remember. This wasn't accidental. This was infrastructure. Just like they built barracks and weapon storage, they built rape rooms. It was part of the blueprint. Let's try to imagine the reality for a woman in that cell. She wasn't a criminal. She was a mother, a daughter from a village Rome destroyed. She watched her home burn. She watched her children get sold. She was marched in chains for hundreds of miles. She was stripped, examined like livestock, assigned a number, and locked in a hole beneath the arena. The waiting must have been torture. She could hear the crowd screaming above. She could hear the lions roaring. She knew she would never leave. There was no ransom, no escape, and then the footsteps. This was psychological warfare. Rome did this on purpose. After crushing the Jewish revolt in 70 AD, historians record that they deliberately took Jewish women for this purpose. Why? To show the survivors, you cannot protect your families. Resist Rome, and this happens to your daughters. But sometimes, the system got too weird even for the Romans. Did you know there were female gladiators? Gladiatresses. Occasionally, women fought in the arena, and the Roman elite hated it. Not because they cared about women's safety, remember. They had women in cages downstairs. They hated it because it blurred the lines. In 208, Emperor Septimius Severus banned female fighters because the crowd started making sexual jokes instead of taking the violence seriously. It embarrassed him. He was fine with the abuse. He just wanted it to happen in the dark, not in the spotlight. So, when did this nightmare end? It didn't end because of morality. It ended because Rome fell. The machine of conquest stopped bringing in new captives. The supply dried up. Today, tourists take selfies at the Colosseum. They marvel at the arches. Tour guides talk about the brave gladiators, but those iron rings are still there in the walls. The scratch marks are still there under the dust. The Colosseum is a monument to what empire actually means. Not just the glory, but the industrialized horror required to keep it running. Every stone in that arena was bought, with lives destroyed in the most systematic way humans have ever devised. That is the story they don't teach you in school. If this video opened your eyes to something new, hit subscribe. We are going to keep digging into the parts of history they tried to erase. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next investigation.